Chapter 3, Section 4, Diffusion and Osmosis. Key concept. Materials move across membranes because of concentration differences. Main ideas. Diffusion and osmosis are types of passive transport. Some molecules diffuse through membrane proteins. First main idea. Diffusion and osmosis are types of passive transport. Cells almost continually import and export substances. If they had to expend energy to move every molecule, cells would require an enormous amount of energy to stay alive. Fortunately, some molecules enter and exit a cell without requiring the cell to work. As the image on the screen here shows, passive transport is the movement of molecules across the cell membrane without energy input from the cell. It may also be described as the diffusion of molecules across a membrane. Diffusion is the movement of molecules in a fluid or gas from a region of higher concentration to a region of lower concentration. It results from the natural motion of particles, which causes molecules to collide and scatter. Concentration is the number of molecules of a substance in a given volume, and it can vary from one region to another. A concentration gradient is the difference in the concentration of a substance from one location to another. Molecules diffuse down their concentration gradient, that is, from a region of higher concentration to a region of lower concentration. In the example of tie-dye, as we see on the screen here, dye molecules are initially at a high concentration in the area where they are added to the water. Random movements of the dye and water molecules cause them to bump into each other and mix. Thus, the dye molecules move from an area of higher concentration to an area of lower concentration. Eventually, they are evenly spread out throughout the solution. This means the molecules have reached a dynamic equilibrium. The concentration of dye molecules is the same throughout the solution, which is equilibrium, but the molecules continue to move, which is dynamism or dynamic. In cells, diffusion plays an important role in moving substances across the membrane. Small lipids and other nonpolar molecules, such as carbon dioxide and oxygen, easily diffuse across the membrane. For example, most of your cells continually consume oxygen, which means that the oxygen concentration is almost always higher outside a cell than it is inside a cell. As a result, oxygen generally diffuses into a cell without the cell expending any energy. Water molecules, of course, also diffuse. They move across a semi-permeable membrane from an area of higher water concentration to an area of lower water concentration. This process is called osmosis. It is important to recognize that the higher the concentration of dissolved particles in a solution, the lower the concentration of water molecules in the same solution. So, if you put 1 teaspoon of salt in a cup of water and 10 teaspoons of salt in a different cup of water, the first cup would have the higher water concentration. A solution may be described as isotonic, hypertonic, or hypotonic relative to another solution. Note that these terms are comparisons. They require a point of reference, as is shown on the screen here. An isotonic solution has a solute concentration equal to the solute concentration inside a cell. A hypertonic solution has a solute concentration higher than the solute concentration inside a cell. A hypotonic solution has a solute concentration lower than the solute concentration in a cell. Some animals and single-celled organisms can survive in hypotonic environments. Their cells have adaptations for removing excess water. In plants, a rigid cell wall prevents the membrane from expanding too much. Remember from section 2 of this chapter that pressure exerted on the cell wall by fluid inside the central vacuole provides structural support for each cell and for the plant as a whole. Second main idea. Some molecules diffuse through membrane proteins. Biologists have long known that osmosis alone cannot account for the rapid movement of water into and out of cells, especially cells such as red blood cells and certainly kidney cells. More recent research has revealed that a group of membrane proteins called aquaporins also play an important role in the transport of water into and out of these cells. Aquaporin molecules form channels or tunnels through the cell membrane. The structure of these channels allows water molecules to pass through in a single file. However, no charged particles, not even hydrogen ions, can pass through. The transport of water by aquaporins is one example of facilitated diffusion, which is the diffusion of molecules across a membrane through transport proteins. The word facilitate means to make easier. Transport proteins make it easier for molecules to enter or exit a cell, but the process is still a form of passive transport. The molecules move down a concentration gradient, requiring no energy expenditure by the cell. There are many types of transport proteins. Like aquaporins, most types allow only a certain type of molecule or ion to pass. As the image on the screen here shows, some transport molecules are simple channels through which particles such as ions can pass. Others act more like enzymes. When a specific molecule binds with the protein changes shape in a way that allows the molecule to travel the rest of the way into the cell. This has been Chapter 3, Section 4, Diffusion and Osmosis. Key concept: materials move across membranes because of concentration differences. Main ideas: diffusion and osmosis are types of passive transport, and some molecules diffuse through membrane proteins.